Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 19 of Spy Family. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. Alright, so last we left off, Anya had sort of survived her midterms. Now it seems like we're dealing with a bit of, I don't know what you'd call it, like corporate cloak and dagger here. It would seem as though this corporation has been run out of business by the Desmond Group. And, oh, there we go, revenge plot, as it were. So it seems like this kid has become privy to the fact that his dad's company is going out of business. Desmond's father is responsible for it, so naturally, he's going to take out his issues on Desmond, correctly or incorrectly. It's interesting because this isn't exactly like the cloak and dagger stuff we'd expect with, Lloyd being a spy and all that. But I think it's a nice sort of middle ground because it's this sort of school stuff where Anya has to navigate a social circle she is unused to, and at the same time there's a bit of, I guess you'd call it like information warfare. There's a lot of cloak and dagger stuff going on, a lot of half-truths and lies. I mean, I guess at the moment none of that really matters, it seems like things have sort of devolved into, like, usual childish jealousy. So it seems like before anything really crops up, Anya is privy that something is not quite above board here. So here we go, here's a little bit of information regarding the previous episode, The idea that some spy would try and change Damien's grades, that seemed like a little far-fetched, but apparently little George Glooman had thought up that plan. So I guess it makes sense that when his intention was to hire a master spy and he ended up getting the guy he did, I mean, I don't want to say you get what you pay for because I'm sure he spent a fair bit of money, but at the same time, he's a kid, he can't be reasonably expected to plan things as well as an adult would. It seems like he's even going so far as to sort of tarnish somebody's reputation. I mean, first he's sort of like framing Damien as a smoker, and like that's kind of silly, you know, like what 5-year-old smokes. But now he's taking it a step further by punching himself and blaming Damien for it. You know, even though there's eyewitnesses to the contrary, you know, teachers are utterly spineless and not willing to believe an eyewitness account. I mean, fortunately for Damien, Anya has decided to step in. And, you know, it's not like she's particularly reliable either, but considering that there's 3 people countermanding the accusation, you know, I feel like any teacher who even vaguely passes for a human being would have to say, wait a minute here, something doesn't add up. So Anya can't help herself, you know, she has to try and play it real cool, even if that's not the most effectual way of getting what she wants. I mean, on the one hand, like, plan B would be kaput if Damien were expelled. Yeah, so things are very interesting now. Like, George is definitely in a rather unfortunate situation. I guess it's interesting in that he feels he has nothing to lose. I mean, when you get down to it, the dissolution of a company isn't the end of the world, you know? There's no, I guess, guarantee that a failing company will ruin you for life. So it seems like George here is sort of suffering from the warped logic of a child. You know, the idea here is that if my company, or rather my dad's company, so to speak, is failing, then maybe by ruining this guy's life, it'll be saved. And, you know, that doesn't really track. So I feel like George is laying it on a little thick to try and garner sympathy, even though he is ostensibly the guilty party here, you know, instigating trouble. I mean, this is definitely a trying time for him, but by that same token, you know, I feel like you kind of have to get a grip. I mean, to some degree, just being like a little kid, this is probably the worst thing that's ever happened in his life, so of course to him it's catastrophic. But given that he's so certain that this is, you know, one of the last days he'll spend at the school, he really seems like he's trying to garner as much sympathy as possible. Like, you know, oh man, the only thing that'll make me feel better is some apple juice if somebody would buy it for me. Yeah, so here we go. You know, if it's his last day, he might as well have caviar for lunch. And I feel like at this point, Damien is already sort of aware of what's going on here. You know, this guy's just trying to prolong things as long as possible. You know, he will never know what it's like to have a Stellar Star of his own, so, you know, if somebody could lend him theirs for a little bit, that would make him feel better. And, obviously that's just, it's beyond the pale here. I feel like he's gonna try something. He really is inventive with the sob stories coming up with. In a month's time, his family won't have any money to their name. He'll probably be trafficked and sold as a slave. Like, I get that, this is, a big momentous thing to be expelled, but, like, get a grip, dude. I do think it's interesting that compared to the other kids, George Glooman here is uncharacteristically ugly. And given the way he's been acting, I feel like this is kind of like that extension of the Roald Dahl quote, where it's like, good people are never truly ugly and wicked people are never truly pretty, The state of your soul tends to reflect on your physical form as well. And it was kind of nice and heartwarming that despite everything that's happened, not that it's been particularly egregious, everybody is sort of coming together to comfort him a little bit, regardless of how little he deserves it based on how he's been acting, or even indeed based on how founded his fears are. Now, it is interesting that Damien is even willing to give him a parting gift, considering what this guy tried to do. I think it reflects on his character that Damien is willing to sort of turn the other cheek, as it were. But at the same time, I feel like this is the perfect setup for a little bait and switch here, George is convinced he's not going to be returning to school. Everybody else is bought into this too. So naturally, after this big send-off where everybody just sort of like gives him stuff as a parting gift, he's going to show up, the next day or the following week or whenever, and it'll be as though nothing had happened. Yep, there we have it. That's a really interesting answer for how was your school day. But as it turns out, George has entirely the wrong idea. His dad's company didn't go bankrupt, they got bought out. The Desmond Group came to their aid. Wow, that's gotta be really embarrassing when you go to school the next day that, like, not only was I wrong, I was absolutely wrong in every way possible. That's almost the worst part, his dad's like, have you finished your homework? You're still going to school tomorrow. Oh, dear. Man, he has made a pariah out of himself after everything that happened. Poor guy. Man, all the goodwill he earned, just flushed it right down the toilet. The poor guy. Like, he's probably worse off than he was before any of this happened. Well, I guess that's the danger of acting on incomplete information. You make a fool of yourself, tremendously so. Uh-oh. Anya has decided that, maybe a little bit more sleep is worth being late to school. Fortunately, I haven't had many days like that. I've always been pretty good about getting up early and, taking care of things before school, but, like, that always strikes me as a nightmare, being late to school. Because, you start off the day on the wrong foot, and then just everything continues to go wrong from there. Oh, here's the plot now. It seems that in her hurry to get ready and go to school, Anya forgot something, and surely forgetting something will reflect poorly on her. Naturally, Yor imagines that this will lead to the summary expulsion of Anya. And, that's not likely. Like, it's obviously not going to be a good thing, but it's probably not going to result in the worst case scenario. So it's going to be interesting to see how Yor's utterly superhuman abilities stack up to a bus traveling to school. I feel like this is one of those things where they'll play it for comedic effect, where naturally she outruns a bus. I guess the big issue here right now is that, she doesn't exactly know where the school bus is, if it's going to another stop or if it's arrived at school already. Wow, that was pretty incredible. It was a rather incredible feat of physical prowess to be able to catch a falling flower pot like that and launch it back up. Not only launch it back up, but with the precision so that it, more or less lands perfectly on the ledge. I feel like the animators are just having fun here. So, this is interesting. Because I feel like there's a couple ways that this could go. Because, on the one hand, Yor could deliver the items and there will be no fallout from it. But on the other hand, having somebody's mom wander around this campus, especially when she doesn't look particularly upper class, that could reflect poorly on Anya just because, her mother doesn't look the part, as it were. I mean, that's a totally stupid reason, but... Oh, no. It seems that unfortunately Yor is already making waves. Maybe standing in full view of the window was not the best idea. Maybe, maybe she could look for Anya more effectively just sort of like peering through the window rather than standing in full view, but, far be it from me to make suggestions on how to not be conspicuous. Oh no, I feel like yours getting some real bad ideas here. Surely she's not going to cause a false flag by letting the animals out. And a most unfortunate coincidence, she almost seems to have incensed the animals merely by being in their presence because they remember. Now, the plot gets a little bit thicker. Lloyd, being paranoid as he is, he naturally assumes that Yor must have seen him heading here and is now following him. That's totally unfounded. Oh dear. This is almost like a farce. So I feel like she's really risking things by beating around the bush here. She should just sort of say like, hey, you forgot this, here you go. Ah, dear. There we have it. It was all a wasted effort. You have to applaud Yor for her initiative, but this is kind of like a running theme. If you're operating on incomplete information, you're just going to cause trouble. So it's interesting that Lloyd kind of plays it cool here to figure out exactly what's going on. That's probably a better approach than just making assumptions and going in guns blazing. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Now, it is interesting that Yor is sort of so despondent about this whole thing that, she's not a good mother because she could have avoided this whole thing had she checked the schedule. I think that's one of the things I really like about her as a character. Like, she's, I don't want to call her dim-witted, but, maybe a little absent-minded, but she's earnest on top of that. Which, makes up for any other flaws. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.